Hello and welcome. I'm Fiona Ellis, coach, author, mentor, trainer, and creator of the Past Life Healing and Integration Technique. Let's talk about past lives. What are they? Why do we care? Are they real? And how can we use them to help heal our current problems and challenges that we're experiencing in this moment today? So, past lives are something that has been fascinating me for years. Actually, at first, when I first heard about them, I didn't believe them at all. I was very logical, very practical, very skeptical, and thought if I could see it, it was real, and if not, it was just that woo woo hippie stuff that I wasn't interested in. Now, if you could see the number of tarot cards and crystals I have in my office, you realize I've come a long way since those first moments. But why did I get curious in the first place? Well, when I trained as a neurolinguistic programming trainer, I learned a technique called timeline therapy, which was created by Tad James. And it was a therapy created using hypnotherapy techniques and really designed to find the way back to the root cause of a problem that a client was experiencing in this moment, find the root cause, release it, and therefore release all the consequences and problems in today. How does that work? Think about it like going to find when the original seed was planted for a plant that you don't want in your garden. So if you've got a weed growing in your garden, by the time you realize that it's a weed, it's a problem. Maybe it's a weed with flowers and it keeps on recreating and growing and spreading. But if you could go back to the first moment, before the first seed was planted in your garden, and remove that seed, then all the consequences would go as well. All of the seeds would leave with it. We can do that with the roots. We can find the roots of a plant. You can chop the top off a weed, but if we go and find the root system right down to that deepest part of it, if we pull it out from there, the entire plant is gone, not just for this moment, but forever. That's what it's like with past lives as well. So as we're going through our world at the moment, we're going through our life, what you may find is that you have recurring patterns. This can come from our filtration system, what we believe, what we experience, and then we're creating a life that matches. But where do we come up with those beliefs from? Where do we make those original decisions? What is it that's driving our filter system? How do we know what's important to notice and what's important to leave out? Again, if we can find the root cause of where our filters came from, we can figure out why do we keep on recreating the same problems we're experiencing in this moment, in this life. When I first started doing timeline therapy, now as I say, I didn't believe in past lives, thought it was a whole bunch of nonsense and mumbo jumbo. But the technique, the script goes something along the lines of, if you want to know the root cause of your problem, was it before, during, or after your birth? Now, my logical brain was like, that's a dumb question. Obviously, it was after their birth, it's their life. But I asked the question and the clients kept saying before. Now, luckily, the client's eyes were closed because my face was probably like, that's right, very good. And if you were to know, go there now and see what you were seeing and hear what you were hearing and feel what you were feeling and tell me. And they would go there. And I remember the first session this happened in, my client said, yeah, I'm in water. And I was like, that's right, very good. And she goes, yeah, I'm a fish. And I was like, cool, tell me about it. And she started describing this lifetime where she was a fish. I can't remember what we were releasing, probably sadness, I think, when she was a fish. And she was describing it all, and we found that original seed of sadness that had been planted in her and then carried forward through into this life, into these experiences now. And it was incredible. Once we'd released that, she came into the current experience and she couldn't access the old emotions. It was completely gone. My mind was completely blown. And it happened again and again and again. So needless to say, my skepticism went from 100% skeptic to 99% skeptic and a little bit curious. And then it just kept on going. I kept getting really curious about what is this past life thing? And probably questions you're asking, are they real? How does this all work? So I wanted to record this little short video before you come and book in a session with me, because these are the questions we need to get clear on. Hypnotherapy, all hypnosis techniques only work if you are willing to make the change, if you want to go there. because it's all about following instructions. If you see those stage hypnotists where the people cluck like chickens, that's because some part of those people wanted to cluck like chickens. But if you try and book in one of these sessions and you're a complete skeptic, it won't work. So don't bother. But the curiosity is what I want to spark. So I'll deal with the first question first. Are they real? I don't know. Don't know. Have you got a time machine? Can we go research it? Can we go back? I don't know. And actually, it doesn't matter. Now, are they real is an interesting question because past lives, what can come up in a session when we say before our birth, it can come up either as a past life or as a genealogical generational ancestry thing. Here's the difference. Again, it doesn't matter, but the work of epigenetics by Dr. Bruce Lipton shows us that we are being affected in the womb up to 7 generations. So there's a lot of generational trauma that is stored in our bloodline that we are now carrying in our bodies. And if you haven't done that yet, go watch his video, The Biology of Belief. I think you can get it on YouTube, but go dig deeper into epigenetics. So when we say before birth, it could be a bloodline thing. So think about your ancestry as literally anything that would show up as on ancestry.com. If you did a DNA test, you could prove that you are 1 part Scandinavian or you are, for me, I have proof and evidence that in my family line, we were from the Orkney Islands or somewhere there in Scotland. So Viking, that was our bloodline, only 4 generations back. So I have Viking bloodline, hence the passion for dreadlocks and things. Now, past lives are different to that. If you did an ancestry test, it would not show up, but it doesn't mean it didn't exist for you. So at the same time as I've got this bloodline of Viking that it can show up on ancestry.com, I have a memory of being a Valkyrie, which is not a Viking. Valkyries were the winged goddess women that took the fallen Vikings to Valhalla. Now, the Valkyrie was one of the most life-changing lives for me to remember, or pivotal moments, I guess, because when I remembered it about 13 years ago, coincidentally when Vikings came out on TV, but I hadn't watched it, I just have always known the word Valkyrie. It was before Marvel started putting them into their movies. I just knew what Valkyries were. I hadn't really studied it. I'd always known the word. But a lot of people don't know it. They've never heard of it. I'd always been, and I'd been weirdly fascinated by medieval history and fighting with sticks and knives. And the first time I ever did archery, I got a bullseye in that first kind of couple of goes. So there's a natural talent that shows up in this life, and you'll experience that in yours as well, where, I don't know, it was like a knowing. And mead, I just knew what mead was, even though most people don't know what it is. So it won't show up on bloodline, but now that I've gone through as under hypnosis and under the remembering techniques, I've seen that life. I now have full memory of being a Valkyrie and then the genealogical of being a ancestry of a Viking. So they're the 2 different ways that it can show up before birth. And again, are they real? It doesn't matter. Ancestry, yeah, we can start to go and prove that. We can go through your bloodline. But past lives, the closest research we have is the work by Dolores Cannon. Now, she was the creator of quantum hypnosis healing technique, QHHT. If you haven't done that technique, it is fascinating. Dolores worked for like 50 years as a hypnotherapist, and what she considered herself to be was a reporter. She would do all of these techniques and she would record them and write them down. And I am so grateful because I only discovered her work 5 years after she'd passed away. But she has countless books and recordings and things that you can watch again on YouTube. Go research her. And what she found is through doing the techniques, when she would put people that were completely unconnected and unrelated under hypnotherapy, they would start to tell similar stories. And so she would get a group of people that would tell a story about a particular village or a particular event. And then archaeological researchers would go to that location and find those tools or evidence in the physical world that that event did actually happen. So there is that level of research that's being done where it didn't show up in their bloodline, but they're remembering an event and they're all remembering the same event from different perspectives. This has happened for me. in my quantum healing hypnosis technique, that's a really long one, session, I remembered a past life in Lemuria. Most people remember Atlantis. I remember Lemuria. And I remember taking my people to a portal keeper who lived by a lake, and he transported us through a portal to another world, because that's a real thing in my past lives, to another world. But we all got through and escaped except him. He got caught by whatever was chasing us. And I remembered that under my own session. After I'd done my session, I began reading another one of Dolores's books, which are transcripts of her sessions. And in there is a story about the portal keeper. His story saying, this person brought these group of people to my portal. I transported them through safely, but I died. I didn't make it. In my mind, when I heard that story, I rewound it. I was like, no, I must be making this up. But it was true. We had both remembered the same moment in the same lifetime, but from different perspectives. So even in the sessions that I've had with my clients, one of my clients came out with something recently. I had a client of mine referred another person, and she went back to being burned at the stake as a witch, and she saw someone in the crowd. Then I did my other client session, and he remembers the same moment, but he was the one standing in the crowd watching her be burned at the stake. So this is beginning to happen more and more and more. So are they real? We don't know, but there's a lot of very interesting circumstantial evidence that makes me way more curious than skeptical as a bit of a believer now. The other part about it is, are they real? It doesn't matter. It actually properly doesn't matter, because whether we look at it from a symbolic point of view, that's all that's happening. Our brains are giving us the answers we need in a symbolic way. It's like sometimes you can watch a movie or hear someone tell a story and it can just be like, oh, wow, it can help you release. It can help you have a breakthrough or an epiphany. That's what's happening under the past life work as well. It doesn't matter what comes through. What does matter is that your unconscious mind considers that to be relevant, plausible, and enough of a disassociation, enough of a detachment from the problem that allows it space to heal it. It's like, okay, there's the problem. If I take a step back and I look at it from over here, turns out it's a bit different. Or, you're looking at the problem, but if you just move it away from you, you can see other aspects of it. You can look around it. That can help us to release what we thought was the problem. Because when we're very narrow focused, all we can see is the problem. But as we step back, as we disassociate and we look at it from a different angle, we can start to find ways that help us make sense of that situation. We can delve deep into quantum entanglement and physics, and all matter always exists. So yes, you were there. We were all there at the original Big Bang or little blip theory, however you think the universe was created. All of our particles that exist in us now have always existed. Once part of us was a horse. Once part of us was a fish. Once part of us was air. So whether you're looking at it logically, spiritually, sciencey, there are many different theories now that mean it's plausible enough that our brains can use it as part of healing. Okay, so I trust that takes care of this little skepticism of you. All we want to do is open up the window of curiosity. Now, why does it matter? Now, it's all about the releasing. It's all about perspective. Again, bring it back to that weed metaphor. We're just trying to find what's the best way to get down to the root. We don't just want to chop off the flower. We don't just want to chop off the weed. We want to get down to that original root cause. If we can get before it, underneath it, and scoop it up and out, we can get rid of the whole thing and never experience it again. It can change completely. And this is the work that we're doing. So if you're coming through with issues like abundance blocks or relationship blocks or fear of intimacy, even allergies and recurring injuries, so that's come through many times. I remember a session where the person had a severe allergy of horses in their current life. And when we did the technique and went back into the past life, turned out they'd been quite an abusive horse owner. So the consequence of that was in this life, they weren't allowed near horses at all, which yay for karma, right? because that's the way karma plays out. So it could be that you've got someone in your life that keeps showing up and is being very toxic to you in this life, but perhaps if we go back to a past life, you were toxic to them. So there's all these amazing different ways that we can look through, we can experience and explore and figure out, where did that original issue come from, or where did that current issue originate from? Now, when we look at the types of past life techniques, QHHT is incredible. But as I say, Dolores developed that as an observer only. It's very much about observe and report. It's the Star Trek mentality. Observe, don't interfere, which, let's face it, they always interfered. So that has healing properties, because just witnessing something from a different perspective can help us make sense of what we're going through now. For me, I found, because I have the ability to do the clearing at the same time, my sessions were clearing deeper than what was typical in those sessions. They're amazing. Absolutely. If you can book in and get one, they're amazing. What I wanted to do, though, is combine the therapies and the practices I've been using now for 15 years. So that is combining the aspects that I love and are really powerful from timeline therapy, from the QHT work, from the Dolores Cannon research, but also from the Aboriginal healing secrets, which, fascinating story. Again, I did a past life integration recently. Now, if you test my DNA, there's no Aboriginal in my bloodline. However, I've always had these visions of a little Aboriginal boy. And he's come through in sound healings. He's come through in different experiences and journeys in my life. And I didn't know who he was. I wasn't sure if he was the spirit of a land or it was like the spirit of someone I was going to meet. I couldn't place it. Then recently, I also had a simultaneous terror of being seen, and I kept on resisting showing up publicly in the world. I had all this talent, but I didn't want to show it. I had all this knowing and intuition and guidance, and I didn't want to show it. I went and did a clearing session with my own shaman, and turns out the little Aboriginal boy was me. And there was a past life where I had been very knowing. I'd been very spiritually connected, and I had known that a massacre or something was going to happen to my tribe, and I tried to tell them, but because I was a child, they didn't take me seriously. So when that happened, all I could do was run and hide. And I remember making the decision, hide. You must hide. You need to hide to be safe, right? So come forward into this life thinking I need to show up and be seen, but I've got this underlying terror, a stain. Think about it like past lives stain. So get a glass of water, drop a color in it, it'll stain it, it'll change it slightly. So I had that show up in this life, you can do anything, you can be successful, but I had this undercurrent belief of gotta hide or die, gotta hide or die. And so it wasn't until we went back into that life, watched that child, what he went through, and then began to heal that. Fast forward to the end of that child's life, because what we do under the deep technique is we go through multiple moments in the same life, not just one event that you do in timeline therapy. We actually watch the entire life play out so we can see it in context rather than out of context. So I got to the end of that life, and turns out he had grown up to be an incredible healer and shaman or medicine man of the tribe, and developed a technique that was an Aboriginal healing technique, which I've been intuitively using in my coaching practices for years before I read the book called The Secrets of Aboriginal Healing, which is the same technique. So there's a chance that I was one of the original creators and users of it in a past life, come through into this life, channeling it is part of my therapy, and it's being backed up in this amazing book called The Secrets of Aboriginal Healing. So all of those are merging now. It's all of the work I'm doing with sound healing. I'm doing with lots of different intuitive guidance as well, coming into one technique where we don't just go back and observe. We don't just go back and find an isolated event. We go back and we appropriately contextualize the entirety of the problem you're experiencing right now. Then we figure out, how did it originally create, and what can we do to release it completely for now and your compelling future? That's the fun part for me. I did a client session, one of my first, with the deep technique, and we did it on abundance. And this result is not typical, but She went home and she messaged me within an hour and she was like, well, that was quick, and had had a random 2.5 grand show up in her bank account as a result of the session. When we clear the emotional blocks, when we clear the resistance, the universe wants to give. The universe wants to give us everything that we desire. We've just got to figure out what's blocking us, what's holding us back from getting there. The universe is not designed to cause problems unless you've chosen them to experience in this life. So there's so many aspects where past life healing can really come into its own. I trust this is giving you a little bit more curiosity. I trust this is helping you to start to be curious about what it is and begin your own exploration. So if you're not quite ready to book in for a session yet, that's okay. Start getting curious. What are the things that you're drawn to? Do you have any recurring injuries or talents? Do you have places in the world where you've never been before, but when you got there, it felt like home? Have you got things you're either really drawn to, like hobbies or significant moments in history or significant people in history? Or, like I was with one of mine, I've got a past life of Joan of Arc, but I was always really resistant to it. I didn't actually learn anything about it. I avoided it at school until I did my clearing, and then was like, yeah, that was my Joan of Arc life. And now it's become a really beautiful integrated part of self. So this is a bit of an explanation. We can go a lot deeper on all of these areas, but I trust it's enough to bring that curiosity up in you. So as long as you're down to at least, I'd go at least 70% skeptic and 30% curiosity, and you're willing to follow instructions, let's definitely have a chat. It's worth finding out whether or not this is the technique for you. It's perhaps worth just exploring to see why you love a particular type of jewelry, or why you're attracted to a particular location, or culture in history. Or maybe this is the difference that's going to make the difference in finally releasing that bad habit, that toxic trait, or that deep-seated fear or challenge that you're experiencing and cannot get rid of in any other way. Whatever it is for you, reach out, book a chat. Let's figure out how we can help and how we can serve and how we can release this for now and for every compelling future of your own personal and ancestral line. So until we speak, take care of you, take care of others, and take care of the greater good. Bye for now.